we have known Dianne for over 20 years, probably.
Yeah.
She is a dear friend. And like you said, she has walked this path. She has shown us that hope and joy are possible because she is an optimistic person that is definitely changing the world and helping others find hope. And she's doing it in honor and memory of her wonderful son, Austin.
Exactly.
So I am excited to introduce her.
Yep. And she's going to talk to us about the long tail of grief, change, communication, and community.
Yes,
Hi, Dianne.
I
Thank you.
love that title, The Long Tail of Grief, Change, Communication, and Community. Okay, so Dianne Gray is a nationally recognized speaker and writer on end-of-life care, grief, and bereavement. She serves as the global ambassador of the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation, and her work focuses on improving care for the dying and supporting those who are grieving. Dianne, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, guys. I am so honored to be here. I love you both. You know, I always tear up when I talk about Gloria because really, Gloria, you are pivotal in this talk today. You know, when we started this conversation about participating, I thought about what do I have to share? And even though people say, okay, I lost a child, but I also have lost many children. I've lost 6 children through miscarriage, and also my son. And I've lost both parents now, and I lost my bio dad when I was 9. And I really have started to look at things, but I looked at this lens through a very long view. You know, in 2011, NIH called me and said, would you do a talk, Dianne, about pediatric palliative care? And Dr. Ira Byock got up on the stage, and I don't know if any of you know who Dr. Ira Byock is. He's the preeminent palliative care physician in the States. He's a mentor to me and a friend. And he did this talk on taking the long view about end of life, and in his world, hospice and end of life. But I thought about you, Gloria, when we were talking about, you know, what to talk about today, because for me, I looked at that talk about the long tail of grief. And Gloria, you were there for me in the very beginning. I'll tell a quick 1-minute story. If ever any of you have lost even a part of your families, you know that there's a day that maybe is a little harder than others. For me, it was Sunday. And I would just spiral down. I didn't do great. It was a really rough day because my family was missing somebody pivotal, my son. And Gloria would call me at 9:30 on Sunday night because she was in San Francisco and I was in Florida. And I was like, but it pulled me through. It pulled me through those early days when you would just call and you would just talk. And it became a part of my restructuring and my reordering. So when it came time to create this talk today, I thought about Dr. Ira Byock, but I also thought about you, Gloria, and Heidi as well through our 20-year affiliation. And that's where I wanted to go into this long tail of grief. Because as a scuba diver and someone who loves the ocean, I thought about the stingray. And for those of you who know what a stingray, they have a long tail and it can zip around sometimes and it can zing you when you least expect it. And you can, in grief, in 2005, when my son died, it felt like that tail would come all the time. And then further along, every now and then, I would be in Publix at the grocery store, or I would be somewhere else and something would zing me and just create this hyperventilation and my nervous system. And it just was overwhelming for me. And then I had to reset. And I started thinking about what I wanted to share with you guys about some very important facts 20 years on. 20 years past the initial death, what does the long tail of grief feel like? It doesn't mean that it will never come back and zing us again. It doesn't mean that it's not there, but the love is there and the profound grief can leave us. And I thought about building resiliency. And resiliency is, like in a simplified definition, it's the way that we rebound from loss. It's the way that we bounce back, because we know that one loss is not the all and done. You don't check the box and you never have to go back. We know that other losses happen. So what are some core components for resiliency. For me, it was a lot about accepting, for example, change, which, if you know me, I love change if I decide that I get to change. If it's change that I don't want, I'm not in a happy place. It takes me a while to reorient. But a lot of that acceptance of change came based on my idea that I needed to control things. And Gloria, you taught me something. We were on a boat in San Francisco Bay, and you were talking about Dr. Byron Katie. And you said that what Dr. Katie taught you was that there's my swim lane, you know, my business, your business, God's business. Did I get that right? I hope so. Is that right? So,
Yes.
Yes. If you could,
right?
yeah.
We're here, yeah.
And it stayed with me forever because it applies to change too. There's my business, your business, God's business. And sometimes what I have in mind for my business is not how it works out. And grief is a lot about that. It is a lot about acceptance of change that, to David Kessler's point, that you don't ask for. But there it is. So when I take my hands off the steering wheel and try to stop controlling change and just say, look, I need to stop resisting this because this is what happened. And Gloria, you especially have been pivotal in explaining to me that change is life and life is change. And that the more I can just stay afloat and malleable, and that it's my business, your business, God's business, that the more I can let change flow through me, including my grief. But also too, the more I adapt to love more, I've noticed for me, I can grieve less if I let go of control. And that once I open my heart, that more love comes in. And that's not to abandon my grief. That's just to be open to love, which, Gloria, you also reminded me sitting on a blistering hot day in Florida that I need to date again, but that we'll save that for another day. But you know it's true. So another thing I wanted to share with you all is about communication and being open to communication as it pertains to the long tail of grief. Monitor your listening ear. There are a lot of people out there who want to convince us that grief is eternal. I call them the isms. Watch the isms, the euphemism. You will grieve forever. But then they leave off the tail end of the sentence, which is, you will not grieve the same way forever. Sure, I miss my son after 20 years. I still miss my son, but is it as painful as it was 20 years ago? No, and I don't want it to be. It's okay to say, I don't want to be the same person in grief that I was in 2005. Again, this is accepting change. I have to accept that I'm changing. I have to accept that I'm moving forward, maybe missing him, but that whole, you will always grieve. I really hope that people can start to bring the tail end of that sentence, which is, you will not always grieve to the same extent or with the same amount of pain, always and forever. Change is our friend sometimes. Communication is important. The other in the isms, I'm going to ask us to apply critical thinking to, which I'm a huge fan of critical thinking, which is grief is love with nowhere to go. I've heard it. I get it. I appreciate it. My son's not here. My dad's not here. Both my parents aren't here. But I can take what I learned from them and the love that I have for them and apply it outward. Open to hope, compassionate friends, mothers against drunk driving. I mean, the list goes on. Kathy Eldon's Creative Visions Foundation. All of those are built because love has somewhere to go. It does. all of the founders of those organizations, including this one, are doing profound and great work in the world. And I think that if we start challenging the isms, the euphemisms of grief, saying, oh, is that really true? Some of them are not really true, or some of them can be adapted to have a new way of looking at things. So grief is love with nowhere to go. There is always somewhere for love to go. Always. We can love our people differently. We can love our grandchildren in a new way. We can love new spouses. And I love that last session, by the way. I thought it was great. We can love ourselves and pay more attention to our health and our wellness and our well-being. We can love others. We can apply. It just goes on and on and on. And even if you don't want to start a foundation, you can bake brownies, share them next door. You can acts of kindness. Joan Cacciatore started something amazing. She called the Miss Foundation after the death of her daughter. So grief always has a place in our hearts, but love always has somewhere to go. And I'm going to ask us to really look at where love is rooted in your life. Where is love rooted? Because that's where your grief can go to. If your love is rooted in small acts of kindness in your loved one, for example, with my son, I'll give you my quick Venn diagram formula for it, okay? Here's what it looks like. What did my son love? What did your loved one really love? So my son had some odd connection to Africa. He had a soft spot in his heart for children that were abandoned or left behind. He also loved getting dirty and growing things in the mud. And so with Kathy Eldon's help, we built a Venn diagram of all those things. And in the middle of it was this idea for a garden. I thought it would be a nice little small kitchen garden. And what happened is that it grew into a multi-acre tract in Africa. It's still there. It's called Austin's Kitchen Garden. It's a part of an orphanage because that was a part of Austin's missing and caring for other children who were abandoned. So it's called Austin's Kitchen Garden, and it's in Kenya, and it still grows to this day, 6 different crops. And now the other part of my grief and grief in general is letting it go. We can start things out of love, but then we can send them out into the universe to grow and do their own thing. So a secondary school took over this farm, and now I needed to make the decision to let it go and let the secondary school help it to move forward in community. And that's where I want to close and wrap this. While grief is personal, it's also communal. And this is a powerful thing. This day and this conference is exactly to the point. But choose your communities wisely. Here's the amazing thing. We can participate in grief and grief communities, right? But this title is so important about a day of healing. You can also focus your healing and your grief together. You can blend them. So for example, if you want to do it through educating others, you can become a grief educator through David Kessler's Grief Educator program. You can also participate in Open to Hope. The community is huge, ginormous, right? There are also tech apps, grief yoga, wellness, book clubs on healing and hope and joy and all of these other things. Because we know now there's a national movement afloat to study isolation. Grief and isolation are not a good mix. Grief and community are a beautiful mix. And in the beginning, I wasn't necessarily the largest community person, because the communities that I went to, I would go and I would feel pretty good on a day, and they would say, oh, you look so tired, or, oh, they were at a different place than I was. It's okay to meet with other people that are at your timeline of grief, early grievers, people that have moved forward, not on, but forward. It's okay to be a beautiful part of these healing communities that will also better your health, which is really where I wanted to have us focus on something here. The difference between early grief and grieving later has a lot to do with self and the journey. And that's a beautiful thing because you can completely choose your path. I went to keynote a conference and, oh gosh, 2013-ish. It was a huge grief conference. And I sat in the lobby like I always do, and I listened to where people are. And there were some people who had lost a child 40, 50 years ago. And they felt very much at the same space. There were other people who had lost a child 20 years ago. At that point, I was 8 years out. And the common thread we had was love for our children. But the difference was the focus on resilience or the focus on the grief. And I think sometimes it's okay to focus on your wellness and your well-being. Focus on your health, focus on community, choose grief yoga, choose movement-oriented activities, because there are also studies out there that talk about bereavement health and your general well-being. So it's okay to say, I accept that my loved one loved me and that I need to focus on building my resiliency and my well-being. And I want to share this with you in closing. While we are grieving, and I've been listening to the other beautiful keynotes, I also want to share that I'm an end-of-life doula. And I've been doing this for 30 plus years, helping people pass. And one of the most beautiful things about it is that even if they were pretty darn angry when they went into the pipeline of what I call the birth canal of death, even when they angry as hay at their different people, when they got closer to death, they really wanted everyone in their lives to be happy, find joy, find peace, seek reconciliation, expand your life, not stay rooted in the loss. Feel free to grow, just grow. And so I want to thank you, Gloria and Heidi, for being an important part of my growth journey. And people like John Edward, who have an app too, called Evolve Plus, who talk about connection and spiritual connection. It's really a long, long journey. I suspect that as we all move forward and grow and endure other losses, one loss will feed the next one, but not in a negative way. How we heal is also endemic of how we'll heal in the future. So I'd like to encourage us to sort of keep growing, keep searching, and find what works for you and for all of us. Thanks for allowing me to be a small part of your day. I really appreciate it.
I've learned that it helped me to help others, to know I'm not the only one, put one foot in front of the other, find a life.
Adding hope to the darkness, you start on the trip to recovery.
Reach deep down inside and say, I am going to live on.
We laugh, we cry, and remember.
Hope without action doesn't work. Hope with action can change the world.
We always say, if you've lost hope, please lean on ours.